Hey y'all, welcome to part 2 of the engine build. In this video, we're going to be removing the majority of things around the engine, as well as I'd like to try to focus on things that I'm finding that I need to replace. So things like all these coolant hoses I would like to replace, as well as some of the vacuum lines. Another thing that I'll be doing is removing parts like these around the engine block to take them and blast the paint off of them and respray them, just to give it a nice refreshed look. Another thing I would like to replace is the clutch. There's a little bit of wear on it, but not too bad. You can definitely tell on the flywheel and the friction plate that there is a lot of discoloration. So a few things I need to replace include clutch, plug wires, coolant hoses, vacuum lines, miscellaneous hardware, just to give everything a refresh. I don't really need a clutch, but since I have the whole thing torn apart, I might as well replace the clutch. That way I don't have to go back in and replace it, hopefully for the rest of my life and the life of the car. I would also like to replace the motor mounts, since 4 out of the 5 of them were bad when I went and pulled the motor. And then probably the timing chain as well, since we're gonna have everything disassembled. So I'm starting to pull everything off the block, and I pull off the thermostat housing, and I find this. All right, new day. I'm pretty bad at this YouTube thing because the block is completely disassembled. So the block's assembled. I had one of my buddies come over, me, my roommate, and him. It took about 4 or 5 hours to completely disassemble the block. The only thing left in it is the oil squirters, as well as the baffle here. Might as well take off the feed line or the return line for the turbo, because this block I'm going to take it to the machine shop, have them redeck it and bore out the cylinders. The bore doesn't look too bad, but there's a couple spots where it's a little scratched, so might as well. I would like to reuse the pistons, but get new rods, because rod 3 is no bueno. So get new rods, put the pistons on the rods, get the pistons cleaned up. The one thing that we did have trouble with, pretty big trouble with, was getting the head bolts out. So here's one of them. They're really, really long, but because they're Allen, these are 10 M10 Allens. We were worried about stripping them out, but we used the 2-foot breaker bar, as well as obviously the 1/2-inch adapter, and they broke loose. It took quite a bit of force, a little more than we were comfortable with, but we were looking on the forums and people were just saying to send it, so we did, and it worked. So here's the cylinder 3 rod journal. It's pretty bad. So definitely going to just get a new crank. Most of the other journals are also pretty bad. If I'm getting new rods, I kind of just want to do a new crank and do the whole thing right. So here's one of the main bearings. You can see how much metal's in it. That's pretty much for every single bearing, both rod and main. So we'll definitely be replacing all of the bearings. Here's one of the main cap bearings. Once again, really rough. You can definitely see the copper that's worn through. So this head gasket will obviously be replaced. It's pretty shot from the coolant. Coolant's pretty rusty in this car. Don't know why. I'll refurbish the whole system. But as you can tell, I'm not sure if this is normal, but the gasket there has pinholes, but you have full channels here. So I'm not sure if that's normal or not, or if this is the right gasket. When taking off everything off the head, please remember to mark your cam gear and oil tubes with exhaust and intake, as well as mark how all of these go inside the block. Your outer ones are going to be longer than your inner ones, but might as well keep all of these the same. As you can see, I've marked it, that's exhaust side, so everything is in order and should be easy to put back in. They'll do the same thing when pulling off all the rockers and the valves as well. So to remove the rocker arms and lifters, it really is quite simple. You just have your lifter here, your rocker arm, you have your two shims and your spring. So the first thing I do is I take the shims off. Just like that. Keep them separated from everything else. And then you're gonna wanna take the rocker arm and you're gonna wanna pull it up and forward. That way it comes over the top of the lifter there. And then your top of your lifter there is going to be a 12.12 millimeter socket. You're just gonna break that loose. And now that you have your lifter out, what you're going to do is you're just gonna pull the spring out. And you're done. I would highly recommend taking all of your hardware and putting it into a labeled baggie. So you have your exhaust 1 rocker arm, your exhaust 2 rocker arm, and so forth. The other thing to note is your shim that has your notch in it is going to go on the left side if you're facing the port. So for the exhaust side, it'll be here. And then for the intake side, if you're facing the port, it's still on the left right there. So let's go ahead and remove the rest of these rocker arms. So now that all the rocker arms are off, I'll take all that hardware, I'll take it into work, put it through our ultrasonic to clean it up, make it look really nice. Then we'll pull off all of the hardware off of the head to get it ready for the machine shop. So here we have the block completely disassembled and it should be ready to go to the machine shop. The last few things I had to take off were the baffle, oil squirters, return and feed lines for the turbo, your coolant bung off your block, and I'm missing a dowel pin, so I'm just gonna replace both of them because that one's not in too great a shape. It's not very flat. Then obviously our main bearings, which we're very clearly not going to be able to reuse. I would also recommend labeling these to keep them in order for whatever order or cylinder you pulled them off. Doesn't really matter because they're the exact same thing, but you know, why not put it in the exact same spot? One thing I forgot to replace was this O-ring right here. This is underneath of the timing chain cover. I will be replacing the majority of the seals, gaskets, O-rings in this engine, but that's one I almost forgot about. That's gonna do it for this video. I apologize for not showing the engine teardown that much. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, you just gotta take it apart. But I'll try to do a bit more time-lapse stuff in the future. So if you like what you saw and want to see more, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks.